Well, I think there's a lot of options to deal with that. I think the National Guard, the Army, the military, these are excellent programs. One of the best things that they do is they provide the structure that a lot of people that are in our jails currently don't have. Our military is one of the absolute best, if you want to look at it like a program, best programs for providing the structure and the environment for people to learn, to do better, to understand that they're actually a very worthy person that can accomplish something. I would definitely support doing that. I think it offers a lot of things, but I don't think the military is the only way we can accomplish those things. Our judicial system reform also encompasses things very similar to that, but I think it is an excellent program and an excellent way to go.
First, what we call a crime, I would reduce the number of things we call a crime by quite a bit. We put too many people in jail, we give out far too many fines, and we suck the dollars out of our economy by doing so, especially with victimless crimes. So, one, I would give fewer people going into the military for that reason. But I do think that there are benefits to having these individuals offered the opportunity or the option of going to the military. It gives them some structure that a lot of these individuals haven't previously had. It gives them training and an opportunity to have a paycheck while they stabilize in that environment. So I think it is a good thing. I absolutely support that. But it really isn't a state issue as much as judicial that can be federalized, because it's a federal program to go in the military. So the military would have to decide what crimes they'll accept individuals in. But I think it's a good program.
Thank you both.
Other questions?
Anyone else? Yes.
I'll try to kind of keep it short. I think both of you guys understand like the bureaucracy and issues with drugs and alcohol in the state. There's programs like the drug courts and things, and actually Polk County isn't funded by the county, and the state won't fund their drug court because the county doesn't support it. I guess getting long here, but I believe one of the problems is like the bureaucracy and with the two-party systems, and no matter how you look at politics, everybody is so divided to, how do you bring that back together?
So my initial plan,
actually,
we did this a couple of days ago, so we're going to start last week, so we'll swap off who starts. First of all, when we look at the issue with the drug courts and such, we need to stop prosecuting people for healthcare issues. Not only would I legalize marijuana, but on my first day in office, I would actually be in the process of filing small possession non-violent convictions. Politicians like to give people money for their businesses or, social dollars. You know what I'm going to give people? I'm going to give them their life back. That's an important thing. The second thing, and this is tough to do in under 90 seconds, we have a real problem in our state with heroin. We've had a problem with meth in the past. There are brand new treatments that are being studied internationally. Part of this has to do with changing our paradigm around that addiction. And I would endorse the study of these new treatments here in our state, and I would do that right away. We need to get these treatments in. One has to do with a drug called ibogaine, which has been shown that a single dose of ibogaine will relieve the withdrawal symptoms of heroin for up to 2 weeks. For people with an addiction, it gives them those 2 weeks in order to actually begin dealing with some of the very core issues of that addiction. The second drug is called ketamine. Ketamine has been shown that 3 treatments using ketamine during a psychotherapy treatment over 3 months, 54% of those people 18 months later were still absent of heroin. The current treatment for heroin success, about 12%. So if I can take it from 12 to 54, that's a huge improvement in treating this. These drugs are what would traditionally be known as DMT-based drugs, and the reason we don't have them is because DMT and its related drug, acid, are Schedule I drugs in America. I got to get rid of the FDA. The FDA is destroying our country and our ability to bring new drugs in to help treat these addictions. And whether you like the idea of treating people with acid or not isn't the point.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks.
Well, I tell you what, the polarized political system that we have right now is definitely due to the two-party system. I think a third party offers a lot in fixing that. But how do you fix that? Well, we have a country that only half the people vote, and I don't think it's because they don't want to vote. I think it's because they understand that regardless of their vote, it seems like nothing ever gets done. What we try to do here is bring together the two sides in a rational format that allows each side to win, so to speak. The biggest problem they have with each other, the Democrats and Republicans, is that A Republican doesn't want a Democrat to come up with a good idea, and a Democrat doesn't want a Republican to have a good idea. And when they do, they don't vote for it simply because it's the other side's idea. I don't think that represents the people very well. I think of a lot of things that we have on our platform, Democrats and Republicans can both see very well. And I think they'll go along with because it's not the other team's idea in the first place. It's a third party, and they would support that because it's a good idea. To address the drinking and alcohol and drug-related issues in our state, I think them are along the same lines. You know, the drinking age is raised to 21. We resisted that very heavily, but although it's reduced some of the drinking and driving, you know, our Tavern League is very powerful and has a lot of good ideas as well, like their Safe Ride program. There's no reason why we can't take very similar ideas from organizations, local communities, to improve these in our local areas. It doesn't have to be run by the state or the federal government. We can solve our problems here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Travis, you've got to have one. Well, we're going to be your guy.
I'm trying to be polite because I'm a candidate too. I figure if I leave the questions off.
Do you want me to ask a hard one? Okay. All right. All right. I think you made an erroneous statement during your opening speech that 1/3 of in erroneous intent, because 1/3 of student loans are currently in default or delinquent.
Individuals that have graduated and moved on.
Okay.
34%, actually 34.5% of student loans are 90 days delinquent. At
Okay.
least 90.
How about it being the biggest revenue producer for the U.S. government? Has that ever crossed your field of vision?
You know, I'll share this.
Go ahead and.
Look, there's you can do this online too. You can look up an asset bubble.
Well, you can find that statistic too online about the
And
U.S. government.
If you look at the student loans issued by the federal government, the picture of an asset bubble and the picture of the student loan asset bubble are identical. They're absolutely, they track 100%. It's an asset bubble. And they put people in school because what they had to do was they had to keep people out of the workforce after the crash in 2008. And this is what's occurred to these individuals, is, hey, I tell you what, so we can bring the unemployment rate down, we'll give these guys a bunch of money and we'll send them into school. Beginning in about 2012, these people began graduating and discovered that they can't get jobs. We have a current workforce participation rate that we haven't had since the mid to late 70s. And these are the individuals who don't have jobs and don't show up in the unemployment. So when you see that the current unemployment rate is, what, 5.8, 5.9%, it's a lie. It's a lie because it doesn't include the kids that are either underemployed or unemployed. Because if you get out of college and you don't get a job, you're not counted as unemployed. You are counted, however, as defaulting on your student loan. And 34.5% of the people with student loans right now in America are 90 days delinquent or greater.
All right, Dennis. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have student loans myself, about $20,000, and the payments are pretty rough on that. I'm behind myself. So I think in order to not only just address the problem, but fix the problem, what we need to do is we need to be able to bring in new manufacturing companies. I'm going to have a manufacturing degree. If I want a manufacturing job, we need more manufacturing. In order to do that, I would address that with tax reform. I would address that with smart government. I think there's a ton of ways to do it. A lot of our politicians in office, they only want to address the problem. Sometimes they don't ever follow through with fixing the problem. And if we're going to represent the half of the country that doesn't vote and the half of each of the parties that doesn't like their party, but they like it more than the other party, and fix these problems, we need to address it in a manner that offers the solutions and follows through on those solutions. We do have a problem with the education. We have a problem with not enough kids getting jobs, but we have that problem through the entire workforce. We need to fix it. I think the tax code, I think the smart government, the judicial system reform, very good points at starting that process.
All right.
I have a question.
Yeah. Tom, the moderator.
Both of you are independent. You're not part of the blue and red. What are you? How are you going to affect change so that a third party does become viable? You know, what ideas do you have in mind to motivate? I mean, we can see, right, that although it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon and there's probably a better football game going on, the competition is pretty tough. But what can be done to make it so that third parties or fourth parties can get in there and
you start, Dennis, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Robert and I were both excluded from the debates. We talked for a long time on why that happened, but it's because of the political gridlock, and they really don't want any other competition. They make it very difficult for us to get in there. One of the biggest bases of people that I have reached out to are the people that are disenfranchised by their current two parties. You know, a lot of people that will vote Republican because they don't want to vote for the Democratic side. A lot of people that vote for the Democrat side don't want to vote for the Republican side. That's the only reason Democrats get to vote. We have incentivized a lot of these people to say, hey, look, we have good ideas. We meet both sides' requirements, and the only reason they're voting for one of the two is because there's not another option. Now, we've tried to reach the half of the country that doesn't currently vote. The reason that they don't do that is because they don't think anything's ever going to change, because they haven't seen anything ever changing. Now, I am fully aware of that problem. I'm in the same boat. That's why I founded this party to begin with, because we need actual solutions implemented for the people of Wisconsin. That's why it's the People's Party. And I think as we get going and as we move forward, more and more people will see that, they will agree with that. And once you start bringing in a very large amount of people, you know, you'll be a force to be reckoned with. They won't just be able to kind of throw you under the rug and not include you.
Okay.
In January of 2013, I realized that the solution to our problems lie outside the system. I started a political party, the Libertarian Party, Jerry St. Croix. We have about 20 members. We've held education events. We met people and shook hands at the county fair. We walked in the parades. In October of last year, I asked the party if I could write the campaign plan. I have 11 candidates on the ballot with me this fall. We have all 5 individuals running for the statewide offices. I have 4 candidates running for Assembly, 1 for State Senate, and I have 1 running for Congress. I have somebody running for every single level of government this fall. The only thing standing between change is you. We do this one by one. It's slow, can be messy, but in the end it'll be worth it. This is what we used to call leadership. Scott Walker and Mary Burke aren't showing leadership. They walked into a machine that asked them if they would step to the top of their ticket to be their candidates. I'm grassroots. Dennis is grassroots. When we change this by getting out and setting up and creating these little seeds, that's what I'm doing this year. I'm planting seeds around the state. And in 2016, I won't have 11 candidates. In 2016, I'm going to have 50. But every election, my goal is to have somebody running for every single open office available in the state. Fully 1/3 of all of the seats available, the races available, are empty this fall. And that's done by the red and blue team, disenfranchising our public.
Okay. All right.
Are there questions? It's open. Come
Go
on.
ahead. Even candidates. Even you, Ben.
You're not going to get good questions if we don't ask them each other.
That's right.
Oh, no, it's, most of my focus was on my opponent. I would like to ask him questions. I find that many of the things he said very frustrating. So, but in a forum like this, it's hard to get, or in any forum where you have both candidates together, it's usually frowned upon to actually ask your opponent a question.
I would encourage it, actually.
I would encourage it too, but that's, I mean.
I have a question, though.
All right,
One of the problems
step
that
up.
I see in government at any level is that we have no media that represents the truth. We have almost no media here. If there is any, I'm not sure. Nobody has talked to me about it. They don't have to check in with me. But my point is, I was listening to public radio yesterday, and I was listening to public radio on Wednesday, and there is some very disturbing stories being brought on there. And I'm paying for it, at least in part. And if either one of you were to get elected, I would be interested to know what your take would be. How would you address tax dollars going towards media?
Right. Our
Good
current
question.
media system is broken, and it's broken because, in large part, we're excluded because the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association has decided that the criteria for getting into the debates is that you have to raise $250,000 and you have to be polling at 10%. And they're not even polling our names. There's no way we're ever going to get to this 10% level. Even if we had $250,000, they would never put us in the debates, primarily because we would be competition for the people who have parties that are spending literally millions and millions of dollars on advertising at their member stations. And this is the problem, and part of the problem with money in politics is that it influences who they cover in their news articles. I spent yesterday on Twitter making fun of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, who said, Burke and Walker offer us one more opportunity to hear what they stand for. I don't think anybody doesn't know what the red team and the blue team stand for. You know exactly what they stand for. But if they wanted to, on any issue that they'd like, they're welcome to send either of us an email. We would be happy to answer any questions they have within minutes, if not within a reasonable couple of hours, so that our voices and our ideas can be heard as well. But they don't want those because we're not spending money in their political system. There's two things I would do to reform the system, first and foremost. One, I'd get rid of our primary. We spend $1 million or more on a primary system so the red team and blue team can get you to go vote for who's running for office. Our last primary, I think we saw, 12% of the population vote? Yeah, this is ridiculous. 12% of the population is going out and telling us who we're going to vote for in the fall.
Time. Okay. Dennis.
There's 3 states in the country that have public funded elections. I believe they're Connecticut, Maine, and I think Kentucky or something along those lines. What they do is they offer X amount of dollars for the candidates to run once they meet the criteria of getting the signatures. In our case, it was 2,000. What that's done for them is it has allowed an equal footing in the media to do ads and whatever they choose to run, if it's yard signs or ads on the TV. The biggest problem that we've had, and there's no official evidence on this a lot of times, but you have the Democrat and Republican side who will raise millions of dollars and they'll throw that into ads on their TV. The TV stations are all, of course, a part of the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association Federation, and a lot of that money then gets passed up the food chain to the Association Federation, right? And the association relies on a polling company from Marquette, and Charles, the guy who runs the polls, doesn't want us in the debates because the association wants a very close debate, so they run more ads, so they pay more to the association. The only way to get that system fixed is by bringing the money out of politics. Europe has done that already. There's a few states in our country that have done it. It works well to do it that way because you have a lot more fair representation of people. That's just a couple ideas, but I think that mentality would go a long way in bringing more representation for all parties.
Are you also in favor of public funded?
No, I think that people should have the freedom and the right to decide who they want to support within those campaigns. I think
Corporations
that,
being people?
Part of the problem is that we have this ridiculous idea that corporations are people. I like Ron Paul's idea. If you're going to be taking large donations, your largest donors, you should be wearing patches on. Your people should know who's actually funding your campaigns and where those ideas come from.
You get any more shot here?
Well, like I said, the reason the Republican Party will say that corporations are people is because that once you file for a business, it technically becomes its own identity. Is it a person? Not really. I think the best way to address that is by either public funding the elections or at least looking into another way to make this possible and make it more fair. We don't have that right now.
Okay.
Further questions? Further questions?
Oh, okay.
On November 4th, if I want to go vote for either one of you guys, and I show up at the poll and I've got a t-shirt that's got your name on it, not only will I not be able to go in and vote, but I'll be charged with electioneering. But if I go and I look at the ballot, it's got your party name right next, it's got your party right next to your name. For you, that might not be a bad thing since it's actually your party. But for the most part, if we go in there and we don't, as voters, always know who we're going to be voting for, a lot of us will just go in and pick the R or the D, and we don't really care who the name is. Isn't that also a form of electioneering by the parties themselves? They've decided, especially with you two being from parties that aren't in the major parties, you guys are already at a disadvantage before we walk into the polls. And when you get there, it's a reminder just in case somebody doesn't know, well, I'm not going to vote for them because they're not an R or they're not a D, so I'm not going to vote for them. If we got rid of it, you've got a very familiar last name, so you may benefit from this one. people are going to go, oh, I know that name, I guess I'm a Democrat, I'll vote for him. And you might accidentally become governor, the Democrats vote you in.
Are you asking
Did
a
you
question or?
Yeah, my question is, what would you guys do about changing that maybe?
Well, like you said, you know, voting down the ticket, whether it's an R or D or whatever it might be, that is a big problem. We have a lot of folks in this country who are in our state that are uneducated voters. That's why you have to fight about the voter ID laws and its roots. That's really what it's about. Stripping the titles off of that would be a very interesting way to go about making that equal if it was only name recognition. You know, I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. I think that's a very interesting idea. And I would be very interested to see if we were to run a mock election with just names rather than name and a party association, how that would turn out. You know, I think, you know, people just like you kind of getting in tune and saying, hey, you know, how can we do this better? How can we make it more fair? That's what we need, you know, to start.
Okay.
The solution is not to take information off the ballot. The more information on the ballot, the more informed the voter will be about who's on it. And as a libertarian, one of the things that we are working to help people understand is that we have a set of principles. And that set of principles outlines how we believe government should function. The heart of our functioning government should be the non-aggression principle. And libertarians who understand what the libertarian principles are will vote libertarian whether they know the candidate or not, because they know we have a judicial committee whose job it will be to follow and track our actual voting record in office. And if our candidates are not following the libertarian principles, we will kick them out of the party. They no longer get to put the L after their name. And what we can do by doing that is we can actually get money out of politics. And we can do that because, look, you're going to get a consistent candidate. Your candidates are going to follow the libertarian principles, and they shouldn't fundamentally change very much from one candidate to the next. And that's one of the ways we can win in that manner, is by doing that. The red team and the blue team fail because they don't have anybody in their parties who's willing to actually hold people accountable for their views and their votes. And this is why, for example, in 2002, when the presidency was Republican, when the Senate and the Assembly and the Congress were all red team, we got Medicare Part D. You want to know why the Obamacare Act passed, why the Affordable Care Act passed? It's called momentum. You vote for the red team or the blue team, you're not getting any level of consistency. These guys are all over the board. With a libertarian, you vote libertarian, you're getting a libertarian.
But don't you want flexibility? I mean, the fact that we're at this position today, we don't know 5 months from now what things may have changed. Ebola may have entered the country or some other catastrophe. And don't you as a representative, are you so hardwired to that platform that you can't deviate given new circumstances?
So freedom has never throughout history ever caused problems. Problems have generally been caused by people trying to control the system. And when you look at Ebola and you look at the problems with Ebola, this doesn't mean that the state doesn't have a role in helping to make sure that there's safety. In fact, public safety is one of the core issues of libertarian. But you see, when we're not involved screwing around with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation or the Department of Workforce Development, when we're not distracted by these thousands of other programs that the state shouldn't be involved in, when we have a problem with Ebola, what would happen at a state level for a libertarian governor, for example, is that we would appoint a committee whose job would be to create a plan on how we address this and help our rural hospitals in particular. We would have a rapid response team who would be putting together kits that can be delivered to our hospitals to help deal with this problem from the state level by creating a grant process in order to address these problems at a more fluid level. Right now, you've got to go through all the inefficiencies of government before you create a rapid response team. This isn't efficient government. This isn't dealing with the actual problems. This is government being the problem, and actually a freedom and a more free marketplace would address the problems more quickly and more efficiently than the current system.
So you do adjust to flexibility. You are able to meet
If the state needed to have a rapid response Ebola program, which essentially we're talking about are going to be the quarantine materials, we would find the free market more able to address that problem by creating the businesses that would create the suits and the gloves, and would be more flexible to that.
Okay.
Here's how I kind of see your question. I always kind of have to put it in terms that I can relate to really well. Why is it that people typically like working with a small business better than AT&T, for example. You can call them up and they'll kind of work with your schedule on when they've got to come out and install something or this or that. And a smaller, more efficient government that can represent the needs of people is more, it's more able to adapt, it's more able to change, it's more able to represent as things change. That's why we like small businesses better than big businesses. I think, the smart government, the judicial system reform, tax reform, simplifying and increasing the technological abilities of the government to run an efficient government, just like a small business, will allow us to meet the everyday changing needs of the people. It's not a one quick fix, but it's a start. I think it's important to be able to change on a dime if you need to.
Okay, maybe one last quick, and I know you both mentioned something about marijuana legalization in your opening statements, and it sounded like the two of you were fairly similar in the approaches that you were taking. There's, decriminalizing where you're just saying, look the other way for the police departments, and then there's legalizing where the government is actually certifying that this does not have any, or it only has so many percentage points of contamination in the marijuana, and we're selling it and we're making profits off it. Neither one of you, though, I think actually clarified your position. Could you do so? And I think we would start with you, Dennis.
It's absolutely possible for the state of Wisconsin to do that. You've seen it in other spots in the country, Colorado, Washington. We addressed it on 3 points: the industrial, medicinal, and recreational. Medicinal and recreational are what you're seeing in Colorado and Washington. Industrial, I think, personally, is one of the absolute biggest aspects of legalization in the state of Wisconsin, because we can produce products from hemp. We can make plastics, we can make biodiesel fuels, our farmers can grow it, we can manufacture things. It will be a massive boom in the industrial field, a massive influx of tax dollars and revenue, jobs. These things are going to allow people like me to pay back my student loans, buy new houses, fund our schools, new roads and everything. And I think this is one huge industry that we can take advantage of. The country's kind of ideological viewpoints of it is already changing. And by making it here first, we can really capitalize on the potentials. And I think, we can definitely do it, whether it's all three or one or the other, or a combination. It's a discussion that we should have as a state. I personally think it's definitely worth it, but you got to discuss it before anything can get done. And that's why we're having such problems right now. Our current legislatures can't even have a discussion.
All right.
So when we talk about marijuana legalization, I suppose hemp can be considered a part of it. The red and the blue team had an opportunity to vote on the hemp nullification bill, and they failed to do it, which is an example of the failure of leadership, frankly, of Governor Walker. We should have hemp in the state yesterday. There are tons of jobs there, and if he wanted to get himself from that 105,000 jobs to the 240,000 he promised, that's where about 20 to 30% of those jobs are. There's new industries there and innovations. On marijuana legalization, I visited Colorado, and I will tell you that the model of Colorado's legalization is not the one that Wisconsin should take. What they did first was medical marijuana legalization, and what that encourages is first encourages people to defraud their doctor with symptoms and illnesses that they don't exist. Not only that, but in Colorado you can buy up to 2 ounces of marijuana a day, and this has created a black market for our individuals that are on Medicaid and on welfare because of their illness to become small-time dealers. That's a bad thing. That's not good. Nobody wants that. My plan would be to legalize both medical as well as recreational marijuana. I would put in place a very simple regulatory process. If you want to grow, you simply have to register online. Let me know how many plants you're growing and where you're growing that and who you're going to distribute that through. The second part of that would be the actual distribution of that, and I think that we need to have as robust a system as possible. Right now, the one thing I don't want to give up is delivery. Most people who buy marijuana get free delivery, and that's a good thing because our poor and our disabled can't get around easily. And so we have to have a good distribution model that helps them to get that medicine.
But one thing you really haven't addressed is everything these states are doing. I mean, the federal is looking the other way, but they're still against federal law. With the hemp farming and all that, I mean, even though the THC level is next to nothing, it's still registered that. So you need to, how would you handle the federal rate coming into a farm?
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a huge thing that Colorado will be looking.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. It would actually start with Robert. Sorry about that, Dennis. It's just the way the format is.
I like the model that they use in particular out in, I believe it was in Utah, with the Utah data center. You know, they'll make it illegal for the utilities to deliver services to the Utah data center. And what I would do is I would tell the federal government, if you raid our legal, and in a compound constitutional republic, which is what we are supposed to be, if you raid our growers or you raid our stores, I will pass laws and we will shut off and we will make it illegal to deliver electricity and basic services to your offices. Period. I will make it a law and I will make it available for our sheriff's departments to actually arrest the federal agencies and the federal agents who go in and illegally bust our grows and our storefronts. And we will take back the right of our state. And that right says that if we grow it in our state and we only sell it in our state, you have no constitutional power over what happens in our state. And that's a promise.
Okay, Dennis.
I think just like you said, the rating from the federal government is a big problem. It has really stopped a lot of the growth from a lot of the businesses, legal businesses in those states, from really expanding. Because they can't get loans, they can't add on, they can't hire more people. They sit with lots and lots of money in cash because they can't deposit it into the banks because the banks are afraid the federal government will come in and raid their stuff. One thing I think that we can do is we can have the states stick up for these businesses. And a very good way of doing that would be creating an organization very similar to the FDIC that actually backed Wisconsin investments up to a certain dollar amount. So if for some reason the federal government would come in, the businesses would still be able to say, look, I do have insurance for this. The state of Wisconsin could pay back, and then the state of Wisconsin could actually pursue getting that money back from the federal government. Until we see this regulations change on a federal level, which I think will come within a very short period of time here, that is one way I think we can bring the industry in, we can get it going, and then we can still make sure that our businesses aren't being raided by the federal government and taken for everything they've got. I think that would be a good way to get going, but I do think the regulation on a federal level will be changing probably in the 2016 election. I think they're going to be grabbing on anything they can to stay in power. So
Maybe, but I don't think some of that money is going. Are we ready for closing statements?
Yeah, we better.
How would you handle Supreme Court decision, though? Do you know your history well enough to know Wisconsin is the state that's ignored the federal Supreme Court decision?
Why don't we, you go ahead and tell them which one, and then let's do closing statements in the response, just due to the time.
Slavery, there's a Supreme Court decision came down, I think it was 1850 something or other, and the Wisconsin Supreme Court refused to file it. It was about returning fugitive slaves caught in the state.
Oh, yeah, well, that has to do with, well, sure.
Why don't we, Robert, you started, correct? Okay, so then Dennis, let's do the format, and then you can address that however you wish to, if you can.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know the specific federal court lawsuit there. I don't. I'd have to take a look at it. But I think as a state, we do have a lot of power to really regulate the things that we do and stick up to the federal government and say, hey, we like this or we don't like that. We got a lot of power as a state. And if we want to really advance our state and push forward, sometimes it takes sticking up to the federal government and saying, hey, we really don't support you in this fashion or that fashion. And as a state, we can make that. We could have done that with the drinking age. We could do that with health insurance. We can do these things. And I think that's what we should be doing. We should be doing that because our people aren't supposed to be regulated by DC. We should be able to actually make decisions that are best for our state. And if it takes sticking up to the federal government, the Supreme Court, I think that's a good idea. The people should support whatever you're doing enough to make it a viable option. So I think we can do that. As far as the closing statements go, I founded this party to represent the people. I think a lot of people are disenfranchised by the current system that we have. I was. That's why I went and founded the People's Party to begin with. Our 5-point plan is our first points in kind of getting started with that. I think it takes a rational approach at how to implement the solutions to the problems that we have. Anybody can point out the problems. A lot of our legislatures do that. What we need to do is have somebody that will implement them. And I think we can do that very well. I have an education. I don't have a ton of experience, but I think it's about time we have a different outlook on how things get done. We appreciate a vote in November. Definitely take a look at our website, our marketing. We do have some pins for anybody that wants any. So definitely take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll address your question this way. Since we're not dealing with slavery in America now, which is an important thing, although we do deal with everybody being debt slaves, the issue that we deal with right now is over gun control. And the question about what happens if a constitutional amendment gets passed that says that the government can constitutionally take away your gun. You have my promise that I'm a full supporter of constitutional carry and your right to conceal and carry without a permit from the state. I do not believe that violent offenders and criminals should be carrying a gun or have that right. But that's why I support your right to carry it. These criminals don't care if they're carrying a gun illegally. They're criminals. That's the point of it. Having said that, should anything like that ever come down from the Supreme Court ruling that they can confiscate our guns, you have my promise as governor. I will actually call up and form a militia. And we have enough guns in this state that we would represent the 5th largest army in the world. We will never take your gun under my watch. And I will not follow a Supreme Court order that takes them away from you. Having said that, I'm going to move into my closing statement. We have significant problems in our country. We have significant issues with our poor. We have 48 million people currently on food stamps. We have an argument going on about minimum wage. The problem isn't minimum wage, and the problem isn't necessarily the people on food stamps, but why they're on food stamps. We have a thing called the Federal Reserve. It's about as federal as Federal Express, and it's printing trillions of dollars a year, bailing out our irresponsible government officials who have created social program after social program that is unsustainable and fundamentally will bring down the system. I decided I had to do my own homework. I was part of the Red Team. I sat in the platform committee in 2012 and I said, we need to put language in here so that our elected officials know that we have difficulties with these programs and we support them when they go to Washington, D.C. and they take on and tackle these difficult issues. And the room went apoplectic. They said, we can't do that, Bob. We'll lose elections. When, friends, do we start telling the public the truth? I started a political party and I ran for office and I recruited 11 people. Because we needed new leadership in this state. We needed leadership that said, I'm not bought, I'm not part of the system, and I did my own homework, and I think I have an understanding of the problems and how to solve them. My platform says that we need to eliminate the property tax and we need to eliminate the income tax so that our small towns in Wisconsin can keep the dollars in their communities and can have those small businesses that built the middle class. But right now, the inflation in our system is destroying our middle class and is absolutely annihilating our poor. You want to know why we have a problem with the minimum wage? It's because a pound of hamburger is $6. A gallon of milk is $3. Paying more for milk than we've ever paid in the history of America. And this is all a manifestation of our Federal Reserve. And it's part of the problems that as a libertarian I bring an understanding of that other candidates don't. We live every election from crisis to crisis. We live every election from election crisis to election crisis. I expect after this forum I'll have individuals say the same thing they've said at forum after forum. Bob, I really like the ideas you have. I think you're one of the only people actually addressing the problems that Wisconsin faces. But this year, Bob, if I don't vote for the red team, the blue team's going to win. If I don't vote for the blue team, the red team's going to win. Look, they're the people who have gotten us into the problems that we have. This doesn't change until one by one we make the decision. I'm going to vote for a different paradigm. I'm going to vote for somebody who represents a different set of ideas. People say, Bob, how do we know that you're not just going to Madison to become an obstructionist, to turn down every idea? Libertarians represent that socially liberal idea that Wisconsin has had since its foundation. And we represent the fiscally conservative ideas that allow an economy to prosper. A libertarian is actually the one candidate that can reach across the aisles to those two sides because we bring that pragmatic understanding of what it is that makes prosperity happen. And that's freedom and liberty. It's an accountable government, and it's an accountable politician who walks in and says, I'm going to defend these principles, and these principles say that your freedom, your liberty, and the opportunity to be economically sound, protection of property, that these are the things that build success and wealth. And I bring the best understanding of those ideas. And on November 4th, I'm asking Wisconsin, join me. Join me in fighting forward, because it's in the other direction. And vote Libertarian. I have 5 candidates on the statewide ballot, and if you live elsewhere in the state, I have additional candidates running for Assembly, Senate, and Congress. That's a paradigm that's changing, and it's called leadership, and I'll bring it to the table, friends. Forward, I promise you, is in the other direction towards freedom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I do keep cheat cards, but no, they are not talking points. They're my talking points. I learned early on that you should always start with a bang, you should end with a bang, and you should try to keep those 2 bangs as close together as you possibly can. Hire me, then fire me. That's my opening bang. I'm Jerry Shidell. I'm running for the state treasurer here in the state of Wisconsin. I'm 67, been married for 45 years, live in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Been in business for over 35 years, still am in business. I was the former mayor of the city of Rhinelander, served on the city council in the city of Rhinelander, and on the Oneida County Board of Supervisors in Oneida County, which is where Rhinelander is located. Now, what does my slogan mean? It means that if you hire me for your state treasurer, I will work to convince the state legislature to eliminate the job, and then you as the voters amend the Constitution and you fire me. Now, why do we want to get rid of this job? There's a 1-line sentence in the Constitution, very clear, very explicit. All the powers, all the duties of the state treasurer shall be prescribed by law. That means the legislature controls completely the duties and powers of the state treasurer. They have chosen to strip virtually all of them from the job. Why keep it? It costs the citizens of Rhinelander, I live in Rhinelander, I'm used to that. It costs the citizens of the state of Wisconsin over $500,000. Now, they will say that that money comes from revenues generated by the Bureau of Public Lands. Absolutely correct. However, if we didn't spend that money on bureaucrats, we would have more to loan to the citizens in other municipalities throughout the state. So I say, let's get rid of it. My number 1 job, if I get this job, is to eliminate this job. Now, the millions and millions of dollars that the state trust funds do generate every year are monies that opponents say we should continue to generate. Absolutely. And they will continue to generate, because it's mandated in the Constitution that the Bureau of Public Lands monies go to public libraries and go to the school systems and remain in the state trust funds to be loaned out to communities who want to go for small loans. This isn't going to change if we get rid of the state treasurer's office. That's there, and I'm not advocating to change that. We just don't need a state treasurer and 3 of his staff to continue to do that. Now, why could I do this job? Well, I think there's several reasons. 1, I'm retired. I'm not looking for a higher office. I'm not using this as a stepping stone. I'm a libertarian. I see an office that needs to go. I'm willing to step forward, like the constitutional founders envisioned, serve my time, conclude the job that I think should be done, which is get rid of the job, and then go home. I can do this also because I have no ulterior motive. Both sides of the aisle can look at me and say, yep, he's the one we can do it with. If you put me there, they can point to me and say they want to vote on it. And therefore, let's give them the chance, meaning the citizens of Wisconsin want to vote on it. So let's give them the chance. I can do that. I can work across the aisle and do that. I give great political cover. And I'm not going to be subject to pressure from above to keep the job, because I'm not a member of the red or blue team. And it's really, really tough for a red and blue team member to fire another red and blue team member. I can guarantee you that if there's a libertarian in that office, they would love to see him get fired. And I would love to be fired. If you do put a libertarian in there, you send a pointed, a sharp, a strong, a very powerful message to the legislators in Madison. Get rid of this job. Cut government, even if it is only a little bit. So in conclusion, hire me, then fire me. I would be honored to be fired by you.
Rule of law. We know that America is a republic. We are not a democracy. We support, as I said, rule of law, not mob rule. We believe in following the Constitution the way it's written, and we won't endorse or support any candidate who won't. We believe in limited government based on Article 1, Section 8 at the federal level, and at the state level following the Constitution the way it's written, and funding only those things the state has the authority to fund, and then leave us taxpayers alone. I myself, I grew up in Marquette County on a family farm. In 1988, I moved to Richmond. I've been there ever since. I became a homeowner in 2009, and I serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals in Richmond, and I'm a citizen appointee too to the Cable TV Committee where I'm the vice chairman. And they have their own budget, so I kind of know a little bit about monies being involved. I'm going to say something that I don't know if my friend here will take it wrong or not, but hire me then fire me is a bumper sticker slogan. It's not a serious campaign. It's not a real campaign. And I'll tell you why. In order to get on the ballot for a statewide office, you have to collect 2,000 signatures. You actually have to get more than that. You can't just get the minimum. The state will toss them out. You have to get 2,000 signatures in a certain time frame. You have to file all the necessary Government Accountability Board papers. They've said if there's even one paper that you don't fill out correctly or don't turn in, even if you get enough signatures, you will not be on the ballot. Then you have to raise money and get your name out there. You can't just expect people to vote for someone they never heard of. You have to make some effort to try to talk to people. Then, periodically throughout the year, you have to turn in financial forms with the state. And after all that, you still have to get yourself elected. I don't doubt Jerry's sincerity. He seems like a pretty honest, capable guy, but at the end of the day, that seems like an awful lot of trouble to go through just to get yourself fired. I've worked at factories where people just got hired on and they really hated the job. They found ways to cause problems so they would get themselves fired because they didn't want to be there. And it was a lot easier process than this, I can tell you that. And I think my opponent can speak for the complexity of the financial forms. I mean, they're worse than tax forms. They're a complete total train wreck. And I think I know why Democrats and Republicans wrote it this way. I think they did it to play gotcha with the other party. You wrote this donation. Oh, you're trying to cheat the system. Oh, I told you those Republicans are crooks. See? It's a stupid little game. But anyway, the office of treasurer is not antiquated. It's been gutted. There's a difference. You could take just about any other elected office and strip it of its duties, hand those duties over to unelected bureaucrats, and that's the key here. These unelected people who do run the unclaimed property program, the local government investment pool, and the InVest program, don't answer to the voters. I'm very surprised at these folks who don't seem to mind getting rid of a constitutionally elected office. It's like, I would think they more than anyone would understand what the Democrats and Republicans are doing here. They're trying to consolidate power. That's why these two parties have been around for over 100 years. They have appointed people who have to answer to them and not the voters. They want to be in charge when there's a census going on so they can gerrymander the districts to their advantage. That's what they're doing here. And they're using the argument of, oh, it's just state treasurer. It's a minor little office. It hardly has any duties left. That's not going to affect us. That's not going to take away our liberties. How do you lose your liberty? Do you lose it suddenly overnight or just a little bit at a time? So even if you can make the argument that if we lose state treasurer, the state government's not going to shut down. True. But they're not going to stop there. They also want to get rid of Secretary of State. And some may say, well, let's get rid of that too. Okay. Do you think they're going to stop there? If you use the argument of those who want to eliminate the seat, I could make the argument that we don't need a lieutenant governor anymore. Technically, she only has one duty left. One of her other duties, presiding the state senate, was taken away in 1976. I guarantee you Republicans wouldn't sit still for that. You could have created an appointed attorney general and then slowly strip away the duties of an elected person to the appointed person and say, oh, we don't need attorney general anymore. What about at the local level? Should we start adopting the attitude that we should only have elections for county board of supervisors and let them hire the sheriff, let them hire the treasurer? By the way, if this is an antiquated office, then every county treasurer is antiquated. So the way they're going about it is, this is not the way to handle it. You want to get rid of the office, fine. Leave the duties intact, go to the voters and make your case. Do it the right way.
Since you said hire me and fire me, I'm not sure what I can ask you, because you want to get fired anyway, so. And I'm not making fun of your campaign, but you had said, though, that you support the Article 1, Section 8, the U.S. Constitution, which I do as well. And you said that you also support the state constitution. I've done a lot of research on both of those, and maybe a lot of people in this room are not aware of that, but those two documents conflict with each other in several key places.
I have no doubt. I haven't had a chance to fully read them all.
Okay, well, case in point is the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution says that I have the right to freedom of speech and that the Congress can't take that right away. The state constitution says that I have the right to freedom of speech as long as I don't tell somebody a lie. And that lie is called perjury, or it's not perjury, it's, and it's escaping me right now, but
It's probably something with the tax code, I'm sure.
well, no, it's about, somebody help me out, what's the word?
Fire in the theater?
Perjure yourself? No?
No,
Okay,
it's-
okay. Well, why don't just go to the question part.
Slander or libel.
Libel,
Yeah.
okay.
Libel.
Well, we should outlaw these
Libel.
parts, they do know.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, though, that in the First Amendment to the state constitution, it says that the judge gets to determine what evidence goes to the jury. So, so how do you say that you support both documents, is my point, when they don't agree with each other?
Well, what I'm actually thinking of is more along the lines of, if it's not in the federal constitution, the states have a say in it. Now, just because the states do it doesn't mean it's right. For example, I think there's a part of the state constitution that says if your land is set aside, they don't have to pay you compensation for it because they didn't technically take it from you. Well, if you can't use your own land, they took it from you. I mean, that's why our party opposes asset forfeiture laws, endangered species acts, and wetlands laws. That's like, you can't tell a private citizen, we're setting aside your land, and if you try to build on it, you try to develop it, we're going to have you fined and maybe even arrested. So that, I'm not trying to suggest at all that anything the state government does and puts in the state constitution is automatically right. The point I was trying to make more broadly was that the federal government doesn't have it in Article 1, Section 8. It's a state issue, and we get to debate and decide it. So if I misspoke there a little bit, because, as I said, that example about we set aside your land, we don't have to pay you for it. It's like, no. That's a violation of private property rights under the national constitution. You can't do that. So, but good points though.
Do you want to chant? Well, before we go on, let's be fair here.
I'll say that, yeah, even though I am looking to get fired, I am doing it in the constitutionally prescribed manner. I have to go down there, convince the legislature to eliminate it in 2 sessions, etc. So I support, obviously, the Wisconsin Constitution and the federal. And as he has said, they conflict. I'm going to fall on the side of the state without any doubt if it isn't specifically given to the feds. But I am in my campaign following the Wisconsin Constitution. It sounds flippant. And yes, my opponent is absolutely right. It is a bumper sticker. But I guarantee you when you go home tonight, you think of us, who are you going to think of first? Hire me, then fire me. It has a ring to it, but it sums up my campaign completely, and it's being done within the constitutionally prescribed manner.
Okay.
I have a question.
Right.
Somebody else have a question? Because I have one. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you a chance to elaborate, because, and then you could go on too, but he was, other than your opening statement, to eliminate, the office, like as he said, obligations are taken away and given to the legislature. How do you agree with, or do you agree with that part of it, to eliminate the office? And how would you respond?
So the question is aimed at Andrew.
Yep,
Okay.
He was saying that he doesn't agree with eliminating the office because
Right.
it's a constitutionally, it's in the Constitution elected. But I'll let him respond to his opening statement, I guess.
Okay. Oh, yeah, oh, that's right.
Exactly what you're getting at.
What you're saying is there's no responsibilities any longer because you agree with that part that the responsibilities are taken away in the first place. And
Absolutely.
And he's saying that there's still
Well-
a responsibility. So how would you?
In the Wisconsin Constitution, there's one sentence, as I mentioned in my opening statement, all the duties. That was put there because the constitutional writers, I'm assuming here, wanted these offices to have laws that had already been accounted for through the elected process by coming out of the legislature. Now the legislature has taken those laws and retracted them, those duties and those powers. All of the things that the state treasurer has done in the past are now being done in other departments. The argument that they're not accountable to the public because there's no elected official there makes no difference for the administration of those laws. The unclaimed property is being returned and is being followed by procedures. There are procedures to do all of the things that were prescribed to the state treasurer. Those laws and procedures are still in place. They're just being done in different departments. Obviously, you have to decide whether or not the electability of a particular person to the office, if that is extremely important, then that obviously will sway your opinion. I don't feel that it is because the duties are still being taken care of by law, by procedure.
One thing everyone here should know, and I've checked this with a couple different sources, the soonest the office of treasurer can be legally eliminated is January 2019.
Wrong.
I checked on WSAU and WISN.
I'll explain it.
But let's assume I'm wrong. Let's assume we can get rid of the office at the end of
April
2015.
2017.
Okay,
April 2017.
let's assume that. That's still 2 years with a treasurer who now has next to nothing to do. It's not like you can go to him and say, we're going to close up your office, we're going to box up all your papers, and you go find a job in the private sector until we get rid of this office. I don't think you can legally do that. So what's this person supposed to do in the meantime? The legislature is, I would hope, not full of dummies. They knew they couldn't just take the duties of the office away and then make the office disappear from the state constitution. They knew that in 2013 and they did it anyway. So now you've got someone there who's going to have next to nothing to do. And one more thing about accountability. And I was shocked to find this out. The Department of Administration head, the Secretary of Administration, determines how much money is taken out of the general fund and put into the budget stabilization fund, the rainy day fund. This is an unelected person who gets to determine, this is in the letter that he sent me, because I asked these questions about the rainy day fund. He gets to determine how much money is taken out of the general fund. I mean, is he a legislator? Did we have an election for Department of Administration head? I mean, am I missing something? So this is what happens when you let appointed people have this kind of power. That's a lot of money.
Did you have a question?
I did, yeah.
Okay, Dennis has a question.
I'm not 100% familiar with the Secretary or Treasury position, but you want to eliminate it, you don't want to eliminate it. What are the other powers that the Treasurer used to have that have been removed by the legislature and given to other appointed positions that you feel are important and should remain in the power of an elected official? What are some of those powers? I know I'm not familiar with all of them. And if them powers were restored, would you still support removing the position? Or, in that hypothetical situation, do you think it would then be better to keep that the position only?
Excellent question. That's a really good one. I think technically we would start with you first.
Well, the Democrats and Republicans want to get rid of this seat because it has no power to offer them. They'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get some elected DPI secretary or attorney general, but this office, it's nothing for us, let's just get rid of it. But they used to run the unclaimed property program, which all of you should check online. You might have some property coming, who knows? the local government investment pool, the education investment program, which is a tax thing for college savings. And right now, they're one of the 3 commissioners on the Bureau of Public Lands. Which, I want to bring this point up quick too. Of all the duties they could have taken away, or left with Treasurer, they took away, they left the one duty that has the least to do. Bureau of Public Lands is like 2 50-minute conference calls a month. I want to show you folks why they're doing this. They want to get the voters angry at this office. Think about it. Why did they leave the smallest possible duty with the office of Treasurer? So the voters would say, why are we doing this? Why are we keeping this seat around? This is all he does? It was deliberate and it's shameful. But the Treasurer could be put in charge of the Department of Financial Institutions. The Treasurer could be put in charge of the Rainy Day Fund, which is actually what I'm proposing. Quite frankly, the Treasurer should be running the Department of Revenue. Who would put a Treasurer outside of a revenue collecting agency? This is absurd. If the Constitution Party proposed, hey, let's have a Treasurer, but put him outside of the revenue agency, Democrats and Republicans laugh us out of the state. They do it and they think, good idea, good idea. No, it's not. So.
Okay, excellent. All right. Jerry.
All right, if the legislature were to restore all those duties, obviously, they then determined that the treasurer's office should remain in place. At that point in time, what am I supposed to do? I didn't change the legislature's mind. I'm running for 1 term, I'd be gone. That's as simple as that. In response to the claim that it would take until, and it is, it takes 2 sessions of the legislature and all the stars have to line up, but it could be done by 2017 April. That's if all the stars line up. They aren't going to, so you're probably right.
But you didn't.
A lot longer.
But you still didn't address this question about which duties were stripped and which deserve being restored.
I don't think any of them need to be restored. They're all mandated things. They're all legislatively mandated items that are being taken care of right now. All you're doing is putting another person there who wants to grow another bureaucracy and make the government bigger and more expansive than it is. It has now stripped this department down to nothing. It is a vestige from the 1800s. At that point in time, everybody thought a treasurer was necessary. Now it's way beyond complex. If you have an unelected bureaucrat who's running things like that, that's wrong. That's the legislature should take over that responsibility and say they're the ones who are going to put the money into the rainy day fund, not an unelected bureaucrat. But that lies within the purview of the legislature, and they are shirking their duty. Don't put that into the state treasurer's job because it's a useless job.
Thank you. Next question.
I have one that just it sort of occurred to me that if you have a gridlock with the red and the blue, let's say, but you've got some of these smaller offices that are still part of the state government, and there's more of an opportunity for, let's say, you folks to go out and campaign much more easily than it is for you to take on Mary Burke or Scott Walker at this point in time. Would it be better to leave the offices intact so that a third party such as Libertarian or Constitution or even a Green Party candidate could represent, let's say, a different perspective, or to use Robert Burke's term, I think paradigm, a different paradigm? How would you respond to that? And I think it would be your turn. Okay.
If the office had any influence on state politics, if the office had any authority to enact, veto, or even propose laws, you might have a valid point. It doesn't. It has none of those things per the Constitution. And if you're going to support the Constitution, the legislature said no, therefore the job is no power, no influence, no authority. So yeah, it's nice to be able to say a Libertarian or a Constitutional Party member is got this office, and yes, it's easier to run for it. Well, it's harder. You drive a lot, you spend a lot of time doing interviews and coming to events. So it's hard to get the job. But it has no power, no influence, so there's really, in my opinion, no need for it. Just get rid of it.
Okay.
office like this is extremely beneficial for voters who have this concern that, oh, we're going to split the vote and the other party will get in. This is not a legislative seat. This is a chance for people to get in and try it out, and drive it around, kick the tires, so to speak, and not worry about, oh, if we elect you treasurer, the Democrats will take over the legislature. No, they won't. It has nothing to do with the legislature. It won't affect who wins the governor's race. And it's a chance to try something completely different. It doesn't have to be Democrat, Republican until the day we die. And for local offices, that's even better because obviously you have a better chance of alternate parties like ours getting people elected at the local level, getting onto citizen councils. You don't have to be elected for that. You don't have to spend campaign money for that. That's another way to do it. I don't know if that's answering your question.
Okay. Great. Anyone else? Yeah. We don't have to use up our entire hour, too. Oh, okay, Dennis.
You know, hypothetically, I guess, if we already have removed the people out of the Treasury Department and into a legislative branch, which is appointed folks, we're still paying for the same amount of people in that situation. I guess, hypothetically, I'm not exactly sure how many are on the payroll, but if we were to move them back into the Treasury Department, just hypothetically speaking, of course, is there a reason why, when we founded this state and wrote in the Constitution, our founders felt it necessary to have a person elected to the treasurer position rather than appointed by the legislative branch? You know, hypothetically moved it back. Would that be a valuable thing to bring to our state, or is that, you know, why was it done that way in the first place? Is there any, I mean, you guys weren't there, but, you know, is there a purpose behind the way it was constructed to begin with, or was that just somebody's idea that was random? You know, I mean, was there a reason they did it that way to begin with?
Well, it created the Office of Treasurer to collect all the revenues and fees for the entire state. Now, at the time, it was like 13,000 souls lived in Wisconsin, so the times have changed.
Like $13,000.
But the treasurer could have grown with the job as they added on more duties and powers to the Office of the Department of Revenue. Future people running for that office could have grown with the job and taken on those extra duties and said, I can learn this, I can do that. And that's not the direction they decided to go. I assume they did it that way to have checks and balances, but in a republic form of government. In a democracy, all you just need is a 51% of people saying, we want this and your rights are going. But I want to make one point real clear. The Constitution Party is all about limiting the size of government to constitutional levels. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about some government agency that has 300 more workers than it should. And people saying, let's keep them on because they need jobs. It's like, no, if they only need 200 workers, they only have 200 workers. That's it. We're talking about a constitutionally elected post. This isn't something you can just get rid of and fire the guy. And like I said, no one has answered the question as I campaign around the state of, what is the treasurer supposed to do in the meantime? I've got things I'm going to work on that I don't need constitutional authority for, such as drafting a new tax code. The whole tax code is a train wreck. We ought to just start over. No tax on income or property. Just rewrite the whole thing.
Okay. Jerry.
When they wrote the Constitution in 1848, they put that one sentence in there. Obviously, they put the position there, and then they decided that they would decide what that position was to do. And at that time, it was a relatively uncomplicated thing because government was very, very small, which is a very, very good thing. It has grown wrongly, in my opinion, and I believe his opinion also wrongly, but it has grown. And so now you've got the complications that have come in. To expect somebody to run for the office and know all the complications is, in my opinion, very, very idealistic. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think they decided when they wrote the Constitution, we'll tell it what it needs to do, and it'll change over time. And they have changed it over time. Now the argument about what is the treasurer supposed to do while we're waiting to get rid of the office, my response is, what is he doing now?
That's right.
He's sitting there doing nothing right now. If we don't start the process to eliminate the job, they'll just keep sitting there. I'm going to actively campaign to get rid of the job, and then we don't have to worry about what is he going to do while we wait to get rid of the job.
I was curious, You mentioned on your flyer, you just mentioned your tax code reform. What do you think, what did you have in mind for specific implementations of revising the tax code here in Wisconsin?
Well, first thing I look at is what is constitutionally permitted for the state government to fund. I mean, that's probably the best place to start. And not everything the state wants to fund, obviously, is constitutional as far as our rights go. But that's a good place to start. Second, my party isn't beholden to lobbyists, so we don't have to worry about, oh, we can't take this out of the tax code. The lobbyists that fund our campaigns won't like it. Well, our party isn't for sale. We don't take lobby money. So we don't have to care what the tax preparation industry thinks. But as far as income and property taxes, this is a ridiculous tax code. The more money you earn, the more taxes you pay. Well, that's absurd. It should be based on how much money do you need to run the basic operations of government, and then leave us alone. Not, well, you earn more money, oh, we're going to have to tax you more for that now. What? That's ridiculous. And as far as property tax, our party is against that too. People shouldn't live in constant fear they're going to have their property taken away from them just because they can't afford the property tax. It's one thing if you can't afford to pay the loan back to the bank. But if they decide to build a $30 million new school building and you can't afford the increase in property taxes, you can't go to the school board and say, well, I can only afford this much, so I'm not going to pay this extra. Well, you'll pay it or they'll take your property. So, to me, the tax code is just simpler if we follow the Constitution. It'd be so much easier on us. And have a tax based on the county levels, how much money they get from the state. And they pay that back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to try to rewrite the tax code in the office. I can sit down and do a theoretical exercise in writing it. But remember, I have no authority to enact a law, no authority to veto a law. I have no authority to propose a law other than the same way you do. You go find a legislature to propose your law and run it through the legislature. So, yes, more power to them to rewrite it. Then find a representative to introduce it. That's going to be the key. I don't think you're going to find any argument from me on the growth of government being way up there. Libertarians are minimum government, maximum freedom, all distilled down to liberty. And they are taking it away slowly but ever so surely. And that is absolutely wrong.
Well, hey, Adam, I want to thank you for setting up this forum. I want to thank all of you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank Jerry for coming. I want to be clear about a couple things as I'm campaigning for treasurer. One is it would be the easiest thing in the world for me to have just said what Jerry and the Republican guy is saying, that hire me than fire me. Oh, that'd be easy, considering there's hardly any duties left in the office. I could have done that too. It would have required no platform on my part. It would have required no real effort on my part. I've spent a good deal of my campaign trying to explain to people how taking away the duties of an office you can't legally get rid of for years is stupid. Jerry's right that you basically sit around and you're doing nothing now, next to nothing. But it's like, whose fault is that? If you work for somebody and you have 6 duties to your job and the employer slowly takes those duties away, is it okay for him to call you into his office one day and say, I don't know why we keep you on the payroll. You don't do anything. You're a complete waste of money. Well, whose fault is that? This was completely stupid and ridiculous. But it's like anything else in life. There's a right way and a wrong way to do stuff. Leave the duties intact. You want to get rid of the office, do it. But go to the voters and make your argument. Don't, it's like challenging someone to a race and you start talking trash, you know, I can beat you, you're no match for me, and then when the guy's not looking, you tie his shoelaces together. Sounds like you weren't too confident you could beat him. Do it the right way. That's been my argument all along if you're going to eliminate this office. If not, give it powers and duties to do. Otherwise, we're going to have another 10, 20 years of this office with next to nothing to do, which is stupid. But do it through the constitutional amendment process. And one more thing I want to say quickly. This hire me then fire me argument's already been tried. Kurt Schuler in 2010 ran on that. 2 Republicans wanted to keep the seat. He wanted to get rid of it. He's been trying. He actually proposed legislation. His party controls the Assembly, the Republicans control the State Senate, and they control the governor's mansion, and they didn't get rid of it. They tried this February to eliminate it. The State Senate wouldn't even vote on it. So there's no reason to believe that someone outside of their party is going to have a lot of enthusiasm to get rid of it when one of their own party members couldn't get them fired up to do it. So the office is going to be with us for some time to come. put the duties back. It makes no sense to, I don't support having some guys sit around all day doing next to nothing. That's absurd. So there's all kinds of things. Other states would have the population of our state, like Mississippi. They've got, the Mississippi state treasurer has like 20 different duties that he has. States like Vermont, their treasurer is elected. She oversees 3 state pension funds. So you can't use the argument, well, our state's too small to mess with the treasurer. There's states with half our population that they've got a lot more powers. It depends on if the Democrats and Republicans feel this office gives them power. If they don't feel it gives them power, yeah, they want to get rid of it. And one of the ways you get rid of an elected office is you gut it. If they don't feel it gives them, if they feel it does give them power, they'll leave all the duties there, they'll add duties, and they'll spend tens of thousands of dollars to get elected to it. So I guess in a nutshell, the whole thrust of my campaign is there's a right way and a wrong way to do this stuff. Elected offices do mean checks and balances, do mean accountability. Now, not with these two parties, obviously, but that was the intent. So I'm not trying to suggest that we lose state treasury, the entire state government will shut down. No. I'm just trying to suggest it is a constitutional elected office. Let's do this the right way. There's no reason to gut it first and then claim, oh, it's a do-nothing office. Well, yeah, after you've gutted it. But that's stupid. This person's still going to get paid. He's still going to be doing his job. This is absolutely ridiculous to me. But that's the way these two parties are, and their goal to consolidate as much power in their control as possible. And I think I could speak to Jerry here when I say that both of us are actually overqualified to be state treasurers. Don't worry about if we have enough experience to do the job. We have enough experience. Don't worry about it. We can handle conference calls. Thank you.
I find it interesting that the slogan "hire me, then fire me" is constantly used to defend keeping the position. And the implication is always that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm not following procedure. I make it very clear. You hire me, I'll convince the legislature to get rid of the job. Then you get to vote on the amendment to the Constitution to eliminate the position. This is where you come into effect. This is where you can say, yep, we want to get rid of the job, or nope, we don't. That is prescribed by the Constitution. That is precisely the way it needs to be done, and that is why I've made it my point the entire campaign. That is exactly how it's going to be done, and it's the only way it can, and I support that method. So to say that, imply that, so that I have to infer that this is being done in an inconspicuous manner or underhanded manner, is far, far from the truth. The job of state treasurer derives all its power from the Constitution via the legislature. The framers of the Constitution decided that's the way they wanted it. And the legislatures who are represented by, or who are representing you, elected by you, have chosen to take those powers away and put them elsewhere. Once you start adding all kinds of more additional duties to it, do you think for a moment that that bureaucracy, that department, is going to do anything but grow? Of course not. It's called turf. And in government, turf is valuable. They fight over it all the time. Why do you think we have dysfunctional government? Not only do we have politicians fighting over turf, but now we've got bureaucrats fighting over turf. Just take the turf away. Just get rid of it. Then there isn't that lever of power to be pulled. That mechanism by which a business and or a special interest group can pull the lever, and all of a sudden out of the chute falls largesse at our expense. Take the lever away. Don't create another bureaucracy. Get rid of another bureaucracy and continue to whittle away at it. And don't think for a moment that if you are voting for a libertarian in this election and you put that libertarian in the office, that you aren't going to send the most powerful message you possibly can. Oh my God, that people are serious. They really do want to have a say in this office. Or maybe the say is keep it. I will respect that. I have no other choice. And I would support that. but we need to give them the chance. Instead of trying to build another bureaucracy, give them the chance to say, let's get rid of it. And then if they say no, keep it, then you have to decide what to do with it. But at this point, my position is, they've chosen, through elected representatives, to abolish the duties, take the next logical step, and abolish the office. Hire me, then fire me. Maybe a bumper sticker slogan, but it sums up what I'm talking about. And in conclusion, I would be honored to be fired by all of them.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, my name is Travis Schachtner. I am the Democratic District 28 Assembly candidate. And after the last few groups of people talking, I'm expecting quite an interesting group of questions, considering that I am running as a Democrat. I'm also a veteran. I served 5 years in the Navy. I was on board the USS Parche, SSN 683, the most decorated ship in U.S. naval history. So if you want me to answer any questions about what I've done while I was in the Navy, the answer will be I left port. And other than that, I left port.
And I would like to add that I'm proud to have been somewhat of a shipmate years before on another submarine.
Bubble has a representative in the room. There is a book called Blind Man's Bluff that covers what my ship was on in theory, or what my ship did in theory. So if you are interested, there was a documentary about it. There is a book about it. I will not confirm or deny anything that is in the book. But I will tell you it is a very interesting read because my grandfather read it and asked me a bunch of questions, and I just shook my head and said, can't answer. I am running for District 28 because there are many issues that haven't been addressed by our current representation. I feel that they were rubber stamping many policies that weren't helpful to the people of rural Wisconsin. And the statistic that I use to highlight that fact is that although, yes, our unemployment rate, it has dropped, and yes, we have gained over 100,000 jobs. The number of people that qualify for free, the number of students that qualify for free and reduced lunches in our state has continued to rise. And we are right now sitting at 43% of the students in this state qualify for free and reduced lunches. A government program to make sure that our kids are fed. In District 28, that number is about to push over 50%. And in all actuality, there are schools that are well over 70% of the people or of the students qualifying for free and reduced lunches. In District 28, there are only 2 schools of the 13 where the students go. There are only 2 schools that are under 30%, and they're both 29. That is not sustainable. That is not the direction we should be going. And my opponent sits there and talks about how I am a tax and spend liberal. But the honest truth is, if we're addressing the issue, those numbers should go down, so we should be able to tax and spend less. We are not doing it. Instead of using our money responsibly, we're giving out corporate tax breaks to corporations that are well established and don't need it. We're making loopholes and then increasing the corporate tax rate to address those loopholes, and then we create another loophole, and then we do another corporate tax break, and then we do another loophole. And we're in an endless cycle of trying to get our taxes in control and then making exceptions for this group and that. That is an issue that needs to stop. We need to get our spending under control. That is completely true. We need to get our taxes under control. That is completely true. But we haven't done it, and we continue not to do it. So it's just a simple intro, and I will field any questions that you have. Yes?
Thank you.
I know we have kind of an unspoken, we want candidates to ask other candidates.
Oh, no, I was just talking about to my opponent.
You said that the current representation was a rubber stamp. You're a member of the Democratic Party. If Mary Burke were to be elected, I predict that there would be some rubber stamping coming out of you if you wish to continue in the office. Your response?
Well, considering that the state, I am running as a Democrat, but the state party has pretty much refused any help to me, I really don't owe them anything. My view on the two-party system is, when I ran for office, I looked at both parties, and this was when I ran for county board. I actually looked at both parties as in a pragmatic view and said, what party am I truly a part of? And I looked at Libertarian, but my primary focus was on Republican or Democrat. Because I agree that small government is, smart spending and small government should be the key. I believe that the powers of government, it's supposed to be, your local government is the most powerful, your federal and state should be smaller. I agree with that view. But at the end of the day, my views and where the parties actually sat today, I leaned more Democrat than I did anything else. So that is why I'm a Democrat. I believe every elected official has to go through that. That doesn't mean you be a blind rubber stamp. That means that's the party that I agree with the most.
So would you say right now you got less funding from your party than your counterpart?
I know that. I really go look through the state, look through what they file through the gap.
Okay.
You
All right, Tom.
right off the bat announced that you were an anomaly in this particular setting today, being the Democrat, because most of them were Libertarian. And I hear often the comparison that government should be run like a business. That the best government is, a model that government should follow is the business model. But today I heard much of saying the best thing we can do to government is to reduce it to the, as much as possible. But that's not what we do with businesses. Businesses always constantly want to expand. My question to you is, I want the smallest government as possible. I think anybody in their right mind would agree with that. I don't mind paying taxes. In fact, I think paying taxes is patriotic. I just want those tax dollars to be spent correctly. And I'm sure that needs to be qualified. But I guess I'd like to hear your answer or your defense of maybe just what you were saying. Why did you pick to be a Democrat? And in conjunction with,
especially if you didn't need their money, right?
Democrats.
No.
Democrats and business, or government and business, that kind of.
Well, my view has always been this, and I have said this on the county board when we were during a committee of the whole meeting. Government is an interesting anomaly. You're going to have two primary views of the roles of government. Either government is a business or government supplies a service. And there is going to be many times when those views conflict with each other. Which side of the razor's edge are you going to fall? So I personally believe that there should be a safety net if you come across a hard time, because life is tough. There should be a safety net. I believe that government should be investing into public schools because government invests in the future. But that's not to say that the opposing side of business, there is no place for it. However, the problem with running government like a business is that business runs for profit over all else, and government, by its nature, does not create a profit. It runs through taxes, which is not profit-based. So you can't, at the heart of government, run it like a business. You can dream for those aspirations. You can push for government to act like a business. But at its heart, it cannot be a business because all it needs to do is tax more to generate revenue.
Next
Okay.
question.
Okay.
So I'd like you to ask, give me some details on something here. So there's a discussion over whether or not Mary Burke would accept the $250 million of federal dollars for health insurance care here in Wisconsin. Well, how much extra mandates come with that? And if they give us 250, how much more in tax dollars do the people of Wisconsin have to stick into our healthcare system to match that or go on top of that? For the mandates that would come.
I don't know all of the mandates that would come.
Do you have experience in healthcare?
No, I do not.
Experience in insurance?
No.
Then why would you choose to put to join a party and get involved in a party that fundamentally doesn't understand healthcare or health insurance, and then vote on bills and support ideas such as bringing in these dollars when you fundamentally don't understand health insurance?
Two reasons. One, the number one cause of bankruptcy in this nation is healthcare. Obamacare, I will admit, is not perfect, but it's the first, I believe it is the first step on addressing this issue. We need to stop making it so people have to choose between the health of their child and their financial well-being. Just opening it up to the free market isn't the solution. The other reason is we are the only country, one of the only developed countries in the world that doesn't have a universal system, where people can just go in and get their medical needs met. That is the other part of what needs to be addressed. When we have to choose between our kids' well-being or financial well-being, or how are we going to pay from day to day, that is an issue when it comes to healthcare. The other part to it is we keep hearing about repealing, we're going to straight up repeal Obamacare. That's well and dandy. So what do you do with all the people that are on the program? What do you do with them? That is not a realistic solution. And the fact that there is a blind push for this and a constant blind push to repeal Obamacare primarily as a
Maybe we'll give you a little extra time because of the...
just to say that we're going to, just so that the other elected officials can say they stood against it. That's getting sickening.
Okay.
But that is at the federal level.
Okay.
So it's more like rhetoric rather than substance. Okay, Ben.
I have a two-part question. The first one is real quick. Do you believe in the U.S. Constitution?
Yes.
Do you believe in states' rights?
Yes.
Okay. Explain to me how Obamacare fits into the U.S. Constitution. Where does the United States Constitution grant the authority for the federal government to tell me that I have to buy anything from a third party?
It doesn't. In the Constitution, it doesn't.
So you don't believe in the U.S. Constitution?
No, it's not that I don't believe in the Constitution. Like I said, Obamacare isn't perfect. There are parts of it that need to be addressed. I believe the mandate is one of those parts.
To be fair to you, I stopped the clock because
Yep.
I'm interrupting you here. You're saying that you believe in the Constitution, but that you're going to support the program that is clearly not constitutional. By your own words. I asked you how it fits into the U.S. Constitution. You said it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So you're supporting something that you admit is unconstitutional.
I never said it was. I never.
Well, it's not the same thing as saying it's
unconstitutional. I might be making the wrong assumption here. Should it be a constitutional part? There are many things you're required by states to have that, if you were to look at it in comparison to the Constitution, are not constitutional.
Well,
if you were to say, by having a mandate in the state that says you have to have car insurance, that's unconstitutional.
It doesn't say that.
Huh?
It doesn't say that I have to have.
The state does.
No.
Yeah, but the state.
There are states that have.
That's the difference.
No.
That's the difference. In a compound constitutional republic, if the state of Wisconsin wanted to pass the Obamacare Act, the state of Wisconsin could have done it. The idea that they did this at the federal level and then dropped this on the states is what makes it unconstitutional. That's where the division in the Constitution comes. There are three outlined things that the Constitution says the federal government can do, and none of those are that they can create a federal health care plan and then force people at the statewide level to purchase it. It has to do with trade with Indians, foreign governments, and what's the other one go?
Well, but don't.
Well, at any rate,
don't
let's-
we have Social
yeah.
Security? Don't we have some other
Social
things that?
Security.
Excuse me, Mr.
Done,
Moderator.
done.
Mr.
Yeah.
Moderator, this is a Fed issue. This is a Fed issue.
Well, just,
No,
We're dealing
it's
with a
a
state.
rights issue.
It is a state.
okay, let's hold on with the interruption. Let's give them 90 seconds to address the part of how it's constitutional. Okay, but I'm just saying, let's stop the interruptions. Yeah, let's let them respond.
There are federal programs, there are federal parts that if you compare them to the Constitution, if you put them to what the Constitution says, should not be legal. Social Security is one of them. There are programs that people put forward that if you were actually to say, is this constitutional? And they were to be held, the answer would be no. However, there are programs that are needed. And my problem is, when it comes to the Constitution, is that we have failed to keep it updated. The fact that we haven't had a national constitutional amendment for many of the things. We can take legalization of marijuana for example. Why is it that we had to pass a constitutional amendment for it making alcohol illegal, and then another constitutional amendment for making it legal again, but we don't have to make a constitutional amendment to make marijuana illegal? That is the proper process for making drugs illegal when it comes to the process.
Technically, marijuana wasn't made illegal. What they did was they passed the Tax Stamp Act and then they refused to sell any of the tax stamps. So actually, much like busting Al Capone, it was actually a tax violation, not the actual marijuana. The original bill they tried to pass, and passed in fact, was actually struck down by the Supreme Court, who said we don't have the constitutional right to make a substance illegal.
All right.
All right, can we, okay, question 8.
Are you a socialist? No.
Okay, yes, you.
That was quick.
Yeah, that was a quick one. Do you want to elaborate on that?
What do you mean by social?
Okay. We'll go back to Nate.
A specific thing?
Well, you appear to support Obamacare. That's a socialist program.
So Social Security.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. I think that should be treated like a 401k or something.
I don't think the suspicion that people have for government is a suspicion I believe that should be also applied to businesses. Because we have had businesses in the past that have blatantly ripped off the people. We have the history of robber barons. We have the history of slave trade in this country. We have the history of people putting business ahead of communities and ahead of government. The one representation that the people have that is supposed to take on that power, and Thomas Jefferson even said, government may not have the explicit duty to take on business, but it is the one form of power that can actually hold them accountable.
So what happens when business is taken over? What would happen
Well,
when government is taken over?
yeah, let me move, because we kind of got the clarification on socialism.
I'm trying to not beat up on you because you're different here, but
He's going to be a punching bag.
no, but you said safety net programs and things like that, and I guess I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to ask the question before you, I guess, but how do you distinguish between the safety net programs and the programs that aren't necessary and the ones that are used as a platform, I guess? Whether across party lines, I guess, you know what I mean?
So which ones are economically viable versus politically correct? Okay.
There is one of the programs that can be addressed that is viewed as a safety net, but one that's being abused by many corporations, is food stamps. Food stamps is a way for corporations not to pay a livable wage because government is subsidizing the people who are working for businesses not making a minimum wage or not making a living wage. Whereas when you have a mom and pop shop who wants to be socially responsible in their communities offering that living wage, they are starting at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
So when there is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. It's not just the safety net for people to get back on their feet, because no one wants to stay on and getting handouts. However, when you make it so that it's easier for corporations, and what we have right now is it's an employer market, which means the employees are fighting hand over each other trying to get a job, trying to move up at least a little bit in the ladder. When we have a system that is making it easier for corporations to continue that struggle, that's a problem.
Okay.
Next
I have
question.
to ask this because you brought us, hold on. Wasn't it a Democrat and wasn't it Barack Obama who gave McDonald's a pass on the Affordable Care Act? Isn't this the same one that people with small businesses, isn't this the same, people who own small businesses that have 52 or 55 employees, they don't get a pass on that. This is bad government against a small business. I think you're mixing this up.
No.
Can you explain how you reconcile those two?
So let's clarify his question, just because the question itself seemed a little bit confusing. Try to phrase it in a way.
Is giving the break to the big business that you're complaining about by letting them off the hook of the Obamacare mandate, whereas the small mom and pop business of 50 or more companies has to and is mandated to offer health insurance, and because of their size, they're never going to get that mandate lifted from their shoulders. And yet you say that government is supposed to be the solution. I need you to reconcile these two, how you think that government is somehow not engendering big business, while protecting small business.
Yeah, I don't think he said that. I don't think he said.
That government is.
You said they're not offering, you said Walmart